The people who will succeed are people who have thought about it, have taken advice, they've got an end game, they've got a strategy, they're going to move forward regardless of what's happening with interest rates, regardless of who's winning elections at a state or federal level. It's all irrelevant to the long-term process of building a property portfolio.
Welcome back to another episode of Relentless Life on Your Terms Season 5. I have a special guest with me that I've known for a very long time, worked together over a decade, and has been in real estate for over 40 years. Mr. Terry Ryder?
Well, it's good to talk about real estate. As I tell people, the hard part's getting me to shut up.
Well, that's okay. We've got half an hour, so talk as much as you can. I want to get as much knowledge as I can. I always leave every conversation when it comes to real estate more knowledgeable when we have our chats, so I'm looking forward to this. You're one of Australia's most respected property columnists. You've wrote books on real estate. You started a company called Hotspotting in 2006. You've got so much experience in this manner. Go to the start of your journey. What was your love in real estate? How did you get there? And then we can move along the timeline.
I started adult life as a newspaper journalist, and I was working at the Courier Mail newspaper in Brisbane. And one day the editor called me in and told me that he was appointing me editor of the real estate section. And I was surprised because I knew nothing about real estate. And I said to him, I told him that, and he said, "That's okay, you'll find out. It's about houses and stuff," which says a lot about the way newspapers are run in this country today, as well as back then. So it's a character trait that if I'm going to do something, I want to do it well. So I decided if I was going to be a real estate writer, I was going to be a good one. So I set about becoming as expert as I could, talking to as many people as I could. And a few years later, when that editor tried to move me out of there into another part of the operation, I resisted. I said, no, I'm just starting to learn about this. I want to stay with it and get better at it.
What was your passion with real estate?
I just think it's incredibly important. It's important to everybody. At any part of the process, real estate is about shelter, and shelter is one of the most important of human needs, and it's about how that's achieved. And it's about all the problems that are involved. And right now in real estate in Australia, we've got more problems than ever before with affordability for those buying and a lack of product and very high prices for those who rent. So it's now more than ever, I think people need good information and advice. And in my perfect world, some of that would get through to the people who make the decisions that matter, which is primarily state politicians who don't seem to understand too much about the problems that they have created, let alone finding solutions to make it easier for people.
Such a large percentage of people's wealth is in real estate because people are so comfortable with a tangible asset they can physically see. And as you mentioned, it's a human right to have housing. So for me, I've loved real estate and been in it for almost 25 years. Even the charities I'm associated with at St Vincent de Paul's, which is help homeless people in Australia, it's such an important part of what we do. But so many people don't really understand the dynamics of what they need to do to get into the property market. Yeah. It's a daunting task.
Yeah. Most Australians are passionate about real estate in some form, but very few Australians are very good at it. It's not taught in schools, for example. It should be, but it's not. So people don't really have an understanding of all the things they did. They don't have financial literacy. They don't understand about mortgages. They don't understand about their rights if they're a tenant, because that's not fundamentally taught. And I think it should be. So part of what we do, and the books that I've written haven't really been about how to get wealthy with real estate. They've been about how to avoid being a victim of the real estate process, because the industry is alive with people doing it badly, people who are exploiting others. So it's important to give people knowledge to be better educated and have some better chance of success with it.
It's unfortunate what you said, but it's actually very true. Because it's such a good industry and there's commissions and money involved, people will always be doing the wrong thing in certain industries. And it's not just real estate, it could be in any industry. Wherever there's money, there's going to be people that aren't doing the right thing. But it is more important to get the right advice, because there is people that have been doing this for a long time, like yourself or myself, that generally want people to buy great assets, to really build their wealth, and first and foremost, understand what it requires to get into the property market.
Yeah, I'm amazed at how many people think they can penny pinch their way to success with real estate. They're happy to borrow money and maybe spend $500,000 on a piece of real estate as an investment, but they won't spend relatively small sums of money, a few thousand or even a few $100s on advice or information. And I think it's the worst kind of false economy. Know a lot of people who want to be in real estate, and a very small number of people have been very successful with it. And what distinguishes that small number of people who have succeeded and have a large portfolio and can retire and live off the proceeds is that they have treated it as a business, that they have been willing right from the beginning to invest in advice and invest in good information. They've built around themselves a team of people they know and trust in all those areas like mortgage brokers and accountants, quantity surveyors, mentors. And that's the reason I think that they've been successful. That's what distinguishes them from the 99% who never get beyond one or two properties.
I agree. And also, some people don't have the money or the financial resource. Anyone's got $20 to buy a book, to jump online and get some free information. So to start building your knowledge and your core competencies is relatively free or very cheap. So there's no reason or excuse for anyone to not go down that path and have those resources. And before you embark on a journey of investing $500,000, first, second, third or fourth property, it's so important to ensure you get it right, because it's the stepping stone to your second, third and fourth.
Yeah.
I always say to people, I used to go to seminars and it used to baffle me when they go, now, stand up who owns 4 properties. A few people. Stay up if you own 8. And the more would go down, more would go down. And then when they would ask, and when I'd get to an in-home consultant and ask that people would have similar incomes, why would someone own so many more properties? And the answer that I established and came up with is because they were buying the right properties. They weren't putting their stepping stones too far apart. They weren't borrowing too much money. They were understanding where to buy and what to buy. And I feel people that buy real estate, they do it the wrong way around. They go to the bank, what's the maximum I can borrow? 800,000. They go to their local agent, they're going to show you a property worth 800,000. They might not rent for 5%, it might be 3%. They get into the property market and it takes them a long time to get into the market again and again. And it comes down to what you said, it's the right advice, isn't it?
Yeah, a lot of people listen to the wrong people. And probably the biggest mistake people make is that they listen to media. They don't tune out the white noise, as I call it, in news media. That's the biggest mistake. I think some people equate tuning into media sound bites and headlines as research. And of course, it's often the antithesis of research. It's more often misinformation than good information. So I think the first step is you've got to I say to people, stop reading newspapers, tune out
How
media.
do you find the right people, Terry? You know the answer. How do you find the right people, the right advice and the right team? The internet's made it so easy to find information, but like you correctly stated, what is the information? Is it good information or bad information? How do I know who's the right person to go speak to?
Well, I think you've got to find everybody in their network of friends and family knows somebody who's got experience with real estate, who's been successful with it. You've got to find those people and talk to them. Ask them for advice. Who do you use? And start building a network of people you can talk to. Just ask questions. You'll be surprised how many people are willing to sit down and have a chat about real estate and tell you about their experience and learn from that. Learn from what's worked for people. Learn from what hasn't worked for people. But you referred to reading books. I think that's a great thing to do. There's lots of good books on real estate out there, as opposed to people who write articles in newspapers, which anyone can do. But having a book published is something that takes commitment and knowledge. You don't achieve that unless you've really got skin in the game. And as you pointed out, it only costs $20 or $30 to buy a book. Buy half a dozen, read them, and maybe you could even follow up and make contact with the authors and ask them questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. You'll be surprised how many people are willing to answer your questions.
And there is quite a lot of good books going around, and there's also sound bites on the internet. But so just recapping what you said, it's by making sure the person is an expert in their field and a good advisor. And a good advisor will be determined based, in my opinion, on their track record.
Yeah. Now, I know that you're a firm believer in asking questions of people who might be your advisors and asking them about their experience, not just in their area of expertise like mortgage broking or accountancy, but do they own real estate? Have they been property investors? How many properties do they have? How successful have they been with property investment?
It astonishes me how many people I speak to that don't ask those questions. And the reason I say that, if I'm taking advice from you, one thing categorically that I need to know is you live and breathe what you do and you're successful in that endeavor. And in this case, it's real estate. Now, if you don't own real estate, how are you going to advise me on how to buy, where to buy and what to buy? But it's astonishing how many people go down that path. So I think it's a very, very good test. What's an expert in the field? And you see many people come on the internet 2022 advising people where to buy, what to buy, or 30, and don't own real estate. It actually baffles me.
People calling themselves buyer's agent who actually don't own their home, let alone a piece of investment property. They think it's an easy way to make money with very little effort. And of course, being a good buyer's agent is something that requires skin in the game, lots of experience and knowledge, and the ability to tap into good sources of information.
So fast forward all your experience in real estate, everything that you've done, you've written books. 2006, you started Hotspotting. And as I said, I've been your client for over 10 years and I've known you for probably longer than that as well. Why did you start Hotspotting, and what can someone get through coming to a company like yours?
It actually came out of writing a series of articles for Money magazine where they wanted me to identify hotspots and to explain why these areas had become hotspots. And so I did a series of 6 or 7 different features over different monthly editions, and each one had a different characteristic. Some were like sea change towns, and others were hill change areas. Others were regional centres with good, strong, growing economies. And as I was doing the research and understanding more about how those locations became hotspots, it occurred to me that this was information that people would have a use for and would pay for, because this was really, I thought, the essence of good property investing. Anyone can go out and buy a piece of real estate, but the people who are successful are those who buy real estate in areas that are going to show superior growth, areas that are going to outperform the norm. And how do you actually identify and find those areas? So I developed that series I did for Money magazine into a business.
And it's important for people to note as well, it's understanding the forward indicators of why a property will grow. And it's not underpinned by one thing, it's underpinned by many things, which means it will be a much more stable market. And as an example, we've heard it many times, when Perth was underpinned by just mining, the property prices went up a lot, but they also came down a lot very quickly because it was underpinned by one thing. If you look at more diverse economies that have great population growth, infrastructure spend, they do have mining as well. There's so many things underpinning it that means it's a more stable market. And I know that we talk a lot about property forward indicators and areas to buy. If you've seen a property market that's boomed, you've probably too late, you haven't hit those forward indicators.
Yeah, we're not looking for markets that will boom, we're looking for markets that will outperform over time. So we take a long-term view, 5 or 10 years at least. So yes, we're looking for those areas that have growing populations, but strength and diversity in economy is really important. That's one of our absolute essential qualities. We never recommend an area that's just agriculture or just resources or just tourism, because those economies are vulnerable. And if the economy is vulnerable, so will the property market be. So we're looking for strength and diversity in economy, but probably infrastructure is the most important word. If we had to single out one word that we find most important, we're looking for areas that have good existing infrastructure, but in particular those areas that are spending money on new infrastructure. So they have big projects under construction or in planning, because those projects strengthen the appeal of the area, but the economic activity they creates jobs and therefore demand for real estate. So that's a common characteristic of all the places that we recommend around Australia.
Infrastructure is a good indicator, because when you see like areas that Costco's coming or these big corporations are coming, they've actually researched the population is going to grow there. And as you mentioned, jobs is a great indicator. And if they're building all these factories or hospitals or schools that they've got good walk scores, that's a good indicator that they're going to need good quality product in the area, good house and lands, which means they're going to facilitate good growth. Now look at Geelong is a great market. Now we've one of the first companies to do what we do. They've been in Geelong. We were selling in Geelong in 2014. Now, when people weren't looking at Geelong, and there was previous markets before that where we probably got there before the booms, because the forward indicators were strong.
Yeah, Geelong's a great case study, because it's a place that was, I guess, a little bit stigmatised. It was considered like the poor relation of Melbourne, and yet it's been one of the best performers in Australian real estate for the past 5 or 6 years. It's a growing city. It's got a really strong economy. It's got diversity. It's managed to transition very successfully from the old economy, the smokestack industries, into the new economy. These days, Geelong's about education and IT and about health services. It's made that transition, because there was a time when media was saying, when the car plants were closing down, that Geelong was finished, that it had no future, and property values were predicted to fall. Well, the opposite has happened because it evolved successfully. Newcastle's done the same thing in New South Wales.
And obviously, give me some advice that you'd give someone who's looking to get into the market, or some of the things that they need to avoid.
Look, I think build your team before you build your portfolio is a little catch cry that we have at Hotspotting. It's so important. It's really important to do the preliminary legwork before you do the exciting bit. We've got an 8-step process.
So preparation.
Absolutely. Step 7 of our 8-step process is looking for properties to buy. There's steps 1 to 6 is what people tend to neglect. Understand about yourself, what's your objectives are. Most people don't even know what their end game is, let alone have a strategy for getting there.
Your risk tolerance levels and all this stuff.
Your risk profile, your borrowing capacity, but the most important one is where do you want to be at age 50 perhaps? Okay, that's step 1. How are you going to get there? What's your strategy? Most people haven't even thought about that, and they need to tap into good advice and information to be able to achieve that, because the average Australian starting out just hasn't got a clue. The word I find people using most of all is overwhelm. People come to us for strategy sessions.
Too much knowledge, you mean, out there available?
Well, overwhelmed by the decisions that they have to make. For example, where in this vast country of Australia do I buy? I mean, I've got no idea how to stop, no idea how to start answering that question, because it's such a big country with so many possibilities. You ask them a series of very basic questions about themselves, and you can narrow down 10,000 possibilities in Australia to a short list of maybe 5 or 6 locations that make sense for them.
So it's not one strategy fits all. And I think it's an important, and I don't want to brush upon that. 8 steps, your 7th step is look for real estate. So the first 6 steps preceding that, or before that, are basically making sure you build the right team. And as well, I mentioned that in my book. That's one of my last chapters as well. The last 2 is find the property and brick on brick, so repeat a process. But all the pre-work is in the preparation. Yeah. It's in the confidence. But I'm going to ask a question because I hear it a lot. How do you tell people with so much information out there how they don't get, what do we call analysis by paralysis, paralysis by analysis, getting too much information out there? How do you stop someone from being overwhelmed with too much information to not act?
Yeah, no, I think that's the biggest problem people have, and people are very good at procrastinating as well. There's want to wait and see people, and these are the people that never make a decision and move forward. They want to wait and see what the Reserve Bank's going to do next month. They want to wait and see what the result of the federal election will be.
What the property prices are going to look like.
Yeah, look, honestly, I feel that those people will never take action. The people who will succeed are people who have thought about it, have taken advice, they've got an end game, they've got a strategy, they're going to move forward regardless of what's happening with interest rates, regardless of who's winning elections at a state or federal level. It's all irrelevant to the long-term process of building a property portfolio.
And we mentioned this time and time. I've heard you say it a ton of times. I've said it. It's not timing the market, it's time in the market.
Yeah.
So I say to people, it doesn't matter where you buy in the market, you'll always make money. And they say, that's a bold statement. I said, you'll always make money if you keep it for the right amount of time. If you look at all the last booms in real estate, we can go back. I remember when I started in the game, I was talking about the late 80s, and I just started in 99. They go, Chris, I was younger, but I researched those times. Even though I was only 20 at the time, I wanted to research what happened before that. And I go, if you bought property at the peak of the market, rates were at 17, 18%, would you have made money? And they looked at me and they go, the answer is 250, 300% return on your money, even at absolute peak. And the reason that is because you kept it for the right amount of time. And I always say property markets, since my experience, have never gone like this ever. It's up and down. But after a 7 to 10 year period, you can predict it's going to go up. But the line isn't just straight up. It's like what we said.
Yeah.
So getting in the market's so important.
Back in that time you refer to, the late 80s, when we had ridiculously high and rising interest rates. They went as high as 17% mortgage rates. That was when I bought a property in Brisbane, the first one I bought in central Brisbane, for $51,000. A humble house on a block of land with views of the Brisbane River. The land alone today would be worth $1 million. At the time, it was hard yakka because...
When did you buy it? What year?
It was... the late 1980s. So amidst 15, 16, 70% interest rate. So it was hard. at the time, but I wish I never sold it.
And 51,000.
Yeah.
So if we use the formula we just discussed that doubles just over 3 times or 3.5, 51 goes to 102, goes to 204, goes to 408. If it doubled every 10 years, it's worth about 450,000. How much did you say it's worth?
The land alone is worth over $1 million. And in that street, the houses that I used to own, they've all been knocked down, and people have built basically mansions on those blocks of land. It's a high-profile, prestige street in an inner-city suburb of Brisbane.
Now, remember I say this, and I use this as an example, Terry, because it always fascinates me. I said that to clients, and I've seen thousands of clients when I was an in-home consultant in my earlier days, which I absolutely loved. And I'd hear occasionally, I never made money through my real estate. I go, how long did you hold it for? 5 years. I go, cool. And I always ask this question, the answer is always the same. What did you buy it for? 200. What did you sell it for 5 years later? 210. Can I ask a question? They go, yeah. What was it worth 5 years? You're not going to believe it. It's worth like 400 or 500 now. I go, exactly. Because the market, even though it was flat at that period of time, it still did increase. But they always go, oh, always the same story. I didn't make much money. And we're talking specifically about house and lands. I don't traditionally think apartments perform as well. Single townhomes or townhomes in nice areas, they would always say the same story. You're not going to believe what happened. And I use that as an example. The first 5 years are close to flatline, but then it went boop, because it's the 10-year cycle. And it's keeping it for the right amount of time. And I think it's the difference in being a property investor or a property speculator.
Absolutely, yeah. And here's a simple philosophy I think that serve people well. I think most people are herd animals. They follow the pack, and they do that with real estate. And I think it's one reason why so few people have real success with it. They pile into a market when they hear or read there's a boom on, whereas the smart people are actually doing the opposite. They're buying when markets are down. They'll buy in areas that they know, they've done their research and they know this area's got the potential for future growth. It's down now. A lot of people will avoid that area because prices are falling. The smart people, that's when they'll be buying in those areas. They're doing the opposite of what the herd is doing.
I think it's Buffett that said, be fearful when people are greedy, be greedy when people are fearful, which is exactly what you're saying. Because most people aren't going to make the right decisions. Most people aren't going to buy when they should, and most people won't keep that. So you need to understand why and strike when the iron's hot, and it's not following everyone else as well.
Yeah, Warren Buffett's actually a great role model. He's a great person to read because even though he wasn't about real estate fundamentally, he was about share market investing.
He was about investing, yeah.
But his philosophy applies to real estate beautifully. He says that, he doesn't buy share market assets with the view of trading them. He buys them to keep them. He wants to buy good assets and keep them and build a portfolio. That's been his philosophy over time. And the other one you referred to, buying when others are selling and selling when others are buying.
It's very important because you look at it, no one's ever explained that to me or said that to me actually, but his strategy is 100% as robust in real estate as it is in his share strategy with buying and holding, which is actually amazing when you think about it like that. No one's pointed it out to me like that, but of course it is. It's buy and hold. It's actually investing in the CEO, which is the long-term view of how that business will perform and put more money into it.
And he said, I don't care if they close the share market for 5 years. I don't intend to sell anything anyway. I buy good assets, I keep them. And he's one of the 5 wealthiest people on the planet. He's in his 90s and he's still doing it. He loves it. And that's one of the other things I think is important about him is he's so passionate about what he does. He doesn't need to go to work every day in his 90s.
Definitely doesn't.
But he does because he loves it.
He's been living, another interesting fact, living in the same home for how many years since he was married. Something bizarre like that. He used to go for many, many years, Macca's, and buy a muffin and a coffee and have the exact amount of change and he pays every morning. Really, really eccentric. Really.
It's a nice philosophy actually for success with investment, but also for success in life. He does what he loves. He didn't actually set out to be wealthy. He doesn't need to do what he does every day because he doesn't need to be wealthier than he is, but he does it because he loves it.
It's a byproduct of his love and passion.
And I find that sometimes people say to me, if you've been successful, what you do, how come you haven't retired? And I think retirement is for people who hate what they do. Think of the most successful people in any field of endeavour, anywhere in the world. They never retire. They just keep doing what they do. David Attenborough, for example, he's in his 90s. He's still doing what he loves doing. He's got a high net worth of, I don't know, $50 or $60 million. But
I think for me, that's a death sentence. If you told me you can have X and you've got to retire tomorrow, I wouldn't be able to do it. Like for me, that would be nothing worse than the day that I won't be able to go to work. No, thank you. But everyone's different, I guess, there's no wrong or right. I think it's a good thing to point out. Someone achieving their retirement and wanting to retire and being able to travel or do whatever they want, there's no wrong or right. I guess it's horses for courses when it comes to when you should retire. But what I say to my clients is, I want to put you in a position where you can retire and it's a choice, not you have to go to work. I think that's the key difference, being able to choose. A lot of our clients at Reventon in their initial days, they have to go to work.
yeah,
But I think it's very, very important to put yourself in a position to choose to go to work.
Yeah.
You might want to travel, you might want to do more things with charity, you might want to spend more time with family, but having that luxury or that option, I think is so important.
yeah. You know, there was a study they did in the United States. I remember listening to a talking book about it years ago. And it was one of those studies where they follow a group of people from, you know, when they're 5 and then they revisit them when they're 15 and they keep going back to them, seeing how they've done in life. When they got to when these people were in their 40s, this was in the United States, roughly half of them had been financially successful and half of them had not. And what was interesting is the people who got rich were all the people who did not set out to get rich. The ones who set out to get rich didn't. Those who set out to just find their passion and do it. They found their passion in their work. They worked at what they were passionate about, and almost by accident they were successful financially because they were doing what they loved. And retirement was never part of their strategy.
Well, look, I will mention and finish on one point. There's a great book that was written, The Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, and he talks about you need to take 10,000 hours to become an expert in your field or become world class. It's something you love and passionate about. You won't be able to do those hours unless you really are passionate about it. If you do 38 hours a week, it takes you 5 years, I think 3 days and 6 hours to do those hours. If you work 40, 50, 60, you can compound that knowledge and that growth. If you do that over a 40-year period, if you do something in 3 years, you're going to replicate that so much quicker. And I think it's the same ideology. Find something you love and die doing it because it's easier to replicate.
If you can make your passion your job, you're so far ahead of the average person in terms of achieving success.
Now, as you said, Terry, me and you can talk for hours and probably underwater, but it is a half an hour episode. So are you ready for your quick fire questions, sir?
No, I'm not.
So we're ready to go. That's fantastic, Terry. All right. Now, breakfast for dinner or dinner for breakfast?
Dinner for breakfast.
Do it yourself or hire a professional?
Hire a professional.
It's the first thing you think of when you wake up.
I'm happy to be alive, and I have a mantra that I repeat every morning, and it starts with, I'm fortunate to have woken up.
Great mantra. Pop or rock music?
Rock.
Camping or clamping?
Camping, I think.
Museums or art galleries?
Art galleries.
Luxury hotel or backpacking?
Luxury hotel.
Ice cream or cake?
Ice cream.
Trip with friends or solo?
Solo.
Beach or mountains?
Mountains.
What's one bit of advice that's helped you along your life?
Treat people as you would like to be treated yourself.
I love that one. Dogs or cats?
Cats.
Beach or mountains?
Mountains.
What's one thing no one knows about you?
That I used to be a skydiver.
There you go. I did my first skydive this year. I did back to back, actually. Netflix or YouTube?
Netflix.
Morning or night?
Night.
From 1 to 10, sir, how much have you enjoyed being on the podcast?
9.5.
There you go. Thank you very much. Remember to like and subscribe for more episodes and content of Relentless Life on Your Terms. Thank you. Terry, thanks for being with us.
You're welcome. That was a lot of fun.